There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. I thank you for taking time. We're going to go through today. What I'm going to do is go through and spend about maybe 20-25 minutes going through some training, and then we'll have some questions. It'd be great if you could put in the chat box if you have questions throughout. Just put QQ so then I can check. You'll see that I'll be looking to the left. I have the questions over here, so not that I'm ignoring you, but I have the questions on the other side. So today I wanted to talk about value communication. And what I mean by this is really there are ways that we can work with our customers and clients in increasing our profitability. And one of the most powerful ways that I have come across is how we communicate with our customers or our clients. And what I'll do is I'll start with an example, and hopefully you can see my screen. If not, let me know. But I'll start with an example, and in this case, this business has revenues of $710,000, and they have a cost of $460, or bottom line, or gross profit of $250,000, and a bottom line of $33,000. What's interesting here is that the owner is actually not drawing a salary. So what we'd like to do, or what the owner would like to do, is to increase that. And one way we can do that is through increasing price. And what's interesting is that, and this is software I use with some of my clients to do profit diagnostics and run scenarios with them and see how changing the numbers might impact their numbers. But in this case, we're going to say we're going to increase sales by 15%, and we're actually going to estimate that we're going to lose maybe 10% of our customers. And what's interesting is even though we lost customers, in this scenario, our bottom line is going to go up by $47,000. So in this case, that could be used to now hopefully pay the owner a salary or grow the business even more. But what's interesting is when you run the numbers, the actual amount of customers that you could actually end up losing and still come out the same is 30%. So that in and of itself is very powerful when you raise the price. And I know what you might be thinking is that, you know, how could I increase my price by 15%? And you know, there's many ways to do this, but how we communicate is number one. You know, as business owners, and myself included, you know, we don't always do a good job at this, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But ultimately, if there's anything that you take away from our meeting today, the one thing that I would want you to remember is to resist, to never ever answer the price question with the price. And I know, because in my business I get this quite a bit. I'll get calls, and a lot of times all they want to know is what the price is. And I need to resist this. And it took me a while to really understand why. But really, what oftentimes, if I just answer with the price, is, you know, I would get that, wow, that's expensive. And it was ultimately automatic, or they just want the price so they can go compare to somebody else. And I'll give you an example. When I left PricewaterhouseCoopers a long time ago, I went out on my own and I started my own consulting work. And I would often meet with potential clients and prospects. And when it came down to what my hourly rate was, I would often get, wow, that's expensive, or that's a lot. And even in my mind, I would think that, wow, that is actually, you know, a big number. But I knew that that's not the case, because it was actually quite cheap when you compared it to what other consulting firms were doing, with what other businesses that had that experience were doing. My rate was actually quite low. And what I later learned is that I should answer that question a bit differently, so that I can provide context of what it is that I do, and that'll help make the price seem a little bit smaller. So what we have to do is understand why people say this. What happens in their minds, when they hear the price. If we don't give, like context, the default will always be, that's too expensive. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see and that I've done is that I think that my customers are automatically price sensitive. And the reality is there's many studies that have been done that shows that, yeah, you're going to have customers that are price sensitive. All they focus on is the price. The reality is the majority, more than 70%, are value sensitive. And when you think about it, that kind of makes sense, because if you buy coffee at Starbucks, or you own an Apple iPhone, or you own a Samsung Galaxy phone, by definition, you're not price sensitive, because there definitely are alternatives or cheaper alternatives to those products. And this could be anything that you buy. The reality is that people are value sensitive and not price sensitive. But ultimately, we really don't know the price of anything. When we hear the price, we really don't know if that price is good or bad unless we have something to compare it against. And so what we need to do for the products and services that we sell is, let's get to a point where the value is greater than the price. Because ultimately, in our minds, when we buy something, that's what we're looking at. When I buy an Apple iPhone or an Apple product, I know that it's expensive, but the value that I'm getting, the ease of use, the other things that it can do, outweighs the price. And I know this, and I can see this value. So our job then, and what I'm going to explain in these 10 strategies that we'll get to shortly, is that we need to figure out how we can utilize our words so that customers can understand the value. And then when you say the price, they won't focus so much on what that price is. They'll understand what that value is, because the reality is the right customers will gladly pay more when they understand that they're getting more. And yeah, I understand that customers are price sensitive, and but the other thing that I know is that those are the type of customers that maybe I really don't want. I don't want the price sensitive customers. I want the ones that value what we do, and I know in your business it's probably the same as well. So let's talk about what strategies that we could utilize in order to accomplish this. So the first strategy is when we're doing a quote or proposal, and I'll get to when you're doing face to face with customers in a bit. But when we're doing a quote or a proposal, oftentimes what I see is that, and I'm guilty of this, is that we state what the features are and the scope of the work, and then we state the price. And what I realize is the problem with this is that what we do then is we encourage people to focus on the price, because that's our brains will focus on what really was the last thing that we see. And the same goes for payment terms as well. And so what I would encourage you to take a look at is that instead of doing this, let's get the price out of the way right away. And let's get the payment terms out of the way right away. And then let's go through features and the scope. But also, and we'll talk about this a lot but more as we go on, is let's talk about the benefits and the outcomes in our proposals, our quotes. Let's talk about maybe some things that we offer, like guarantees, and then the optional extras that maybe you might have. And what this will do is that it will focus the customer's mind on the last things that you said. And what's interesting is by doing that, and I know that this is the case because I've, in my own mind, have come across this, and I'll explain a little bit more as we go into the strategies, that will leave an impression on my mind of, wow, yeah, I didn't think of that benefit, or yeah, that feature is something that would definitely help out. And it kind of puts the price to the side. We're not trying to use trickery with our customers, but we're trying to help them or lead them on a path of understanding the value that we all offer as entrepreneurs. And that's important, that we want to make sure we get that across, because ultimately we're in the business of helping people. Yes, we want to make money, but ultimately, most people get into the business, and I'm sure you're the same. I'm this way. I want to help our clients, and I want to help them succeed in their business because that's what I enjoy doing, and I'm sure you're the same as well. So the next strategy, it builds on the first strategy, and this one you would use when you're doing face-to-face communication. And what you want to do in this case is, I call it the price sandwich benefit. And really what you're doing is you're going to state the benefits. Then what you're going to do is state the price. But ultimately you follow up with more benefits that you provide. And this way, again, it focuses your customer on the benefits, and you're saving the ones that are the ultimate outcomes and the benefits to after the price. And this can be done when you're doing face-to-face meetings, and it can be done in any business that you're involved. Even if you own an auto repair shop, you want to make sure that you get the benefits out, and you want to the price, of course, but also you want the customer to understand. I just had our brakes repaired, and when they saw the car and gave me the price was quite a bit of money, and without me knowing that, okay, well, I understand the brakes, and there's the brake pads, and there's rotors that may need to be replaced or trimmed down, or there's other things you can do. I knew that as a customer because I just have that experience that I've gone through in the past. But you can imagine if somebody comes into your shop and you give them a price to fix the brakes, probably their first reaction is going to be, okay, I got this price. I'm going to go down the street to another shop and see what that price is. And if that shop is not has the integrity that you have, they're probably going to get it much cheaper, but the work definitely is not going to be done right. And they're most likely not going to replace something that actually does need to be replaced, and it's just going to cause problems in the future. And without being able to provide that information to your customer, it's really hard for them to really understand. Even though it seems obvious to you, it's definitely not obvious to them. So the next strategy is to focus on the pain. Avoidance of pain is more powerful than the attainment of gain. And, really we're motivated more by pain than gain. And there's been studies that have shown this. But if you're in pain, I just want to get it solved, right? So as business owners, we really want to build up on what the pain is and what our solution is. And no, we're not trying to, to drill this into someone. We just want them to understand about, some of the pain that we know that they may be going through, or understand what it is that they're actually going through, and talk about this as much as possible, and how our solutions can actually help. And there are many different types of pain. There could be less profit, more tax, definitely higher costs, less cash. But there's also non-cash items that are definitely painful, as far as stress. I mentioned earlier getting the car done. It's stressful to get to take time to get that done, to find the right mechanic, because we actually just moved, so we need to find a different mechanic. That's stressful. There's risks. I don't know if they're going to do the work right. If you can explain to the customer that you back your work, and if there's any issues, you can bring it in. Reduced wealth is another pain that a lot of people go through. Penalties and interest in my business, that's definitely a big one, and you can help ease that. Uncertainty, that's another one, and probably one of the biggest one is time and hassle that our customers go through. So what you want to do is ask these questions. But what I would do even before you have these meetings or you do these proposals is sit down in your business and go through what are some of the pains that you're aware of that your customers go through, and what and how your solutions can actually address those pains. And what I would actually do is encourage you to think about putting this on your website, and wording it maybe in like a frequently asked questions, or putting this into your brochures, or even coming up with questions when you're meeting with customers or clients is kind of leading them and saying, some of our customers have experienced this. Have you got that kind of the same thing? Just to kind of get more out of them, because that way you can better present a solution and help them. So the next strategy is, turning our features into benefits. And marketers teach us, or I have learned, is that, nobody really buys features. And it's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I've made and that I've seen, is that we list the features of what it is that we do, and it doesn't lend into what the benefits are, what people really care about when they're buying things. So let me give you an example, a simple example. If I wanted to have a hole in my wall, but I didn't have the right drill to do it, or I didn't have a drill to do it, and I went to the hardware store and they told me the features of these drills, I probably wouldn't be too interested in, because at the end of the day, I just need a hole in the wall. And without asking the right questions, I, as selling that drill, wouldn't know that. So the thing that I learned is that we really take for granted, the things that we do, and that our customer knows this. Going back to my example of getting my brakes fixed, they never mentioned anything about the process of doing the brakes. And they kind of understood that, or at least thought that, well, I knew that the brakes just needed to be replaced. But there's a lot, believe me, there's a lot that goes into it that I, as a consumer, understood from my experience, but most are not going to, and they won't know what questions to ask. I knew what questions to ask and had a better understanding, whereas another customer may just go somewhere else, and we don't want that to happen. So we make this mistake, and we assume that everybody understands what it is we do, and the same in my industry as well. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you want to build a barn, okay, and you go out and you get quotes, or contracts or proposals from various contractors, and you're going through the proposal, and one of the features you see is that it states that in the contract or proposal, we carry professional indemnity insurance. And you're thinking, wow, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I wanted professional indemnity insurance, right? This is the one I'm going to go with. Of course, that's not the case, right? I don't even know what that means, or you may know what that means, or that sounds great. They got insurance. I don't know what professional indemnity. I don't know what that's a legal term, right? And so what we need to do is not take for granted that they know what that feature is, right? We should state something like, which means that you are fully protected in the unlikely event of missing. You have complete peace of mind that you're never left out of pocket. And this could apply to any business. It applies to my business. If we create an error which results in a penalty, we're going to pay that penalty. It's not great that we do that, but it is great from the customer standpoint, because they want to know that we back our work. And the same thing goes for my example of the brakes. I want to know that they back their work. So let's take an example in my world. Okay, I could state that as part of your financial statements, we also carry out a tax planning review. In my mind, I know what that means, and it's obvious. Seems like it's we're going to review for tax planning, but the customer may not know what that means, and I shouldn't take that for granted, right? I should state that this detailed tax planning will identify tax savings, so that you pay the absolute minimum amount of tax that you're legally due to pay. And now I understand a little bit more. And as a customer, you deserve to understand what that means. So to build on this, the next strategy that you can utilize is what I call linking phrases. And this is a technique to take those features and turn them into benefits. What we basically say is we state a feature, and then we utilize this phrase such as, which means that, or this means you, or so that. And what you're trying to do is you're taking that feature and you're turning it into a benefit by utilizing these phrases. The phrase will link it to the other. So every time that you have a feature, what you can do before you even meet with your customer, or you can add to your website or to your brochures, is ask yourself this question when you have a feature: so what? Like the example I had earlier, we do a tax planning review. So what? Or how does this benefit my customer? And then think about how you can address that, or come up with ways to comment on what that is, or add it to your website or your brochures or your communications, in your sales scripts, for example. Ask yourself for each feature, so what? Because the reality is, as entrepreneurs, you provide a tremendous amount of value that customers don't know what that is at the end of the day. And this is something that I realized as an entrepreneur. I didn't fully, I took for granted that my customers knew this, and I should never do that. And what's the old saying? We shouldn't assume, right? So the same thing applies in my business. And the next strategy is the ultimate benefit. What is the end result? And this kind of builds on the last strategy. All of them kind of build on each other, but this one builds on the last one. Ultimately in life, right, there are certain things that we want, right? You want to attach the feature of your product to this ultimate benefit, because when you understand the ultimate benefit, customers are going to want to buy. And you do this by continually drilling down. If you are in marketing, for example, and the ultimate benefit that your customer wants, and you're speaking with the customer, usually it's going to be they want to grow sales, they want to get more customers. And by drilling down in this area and helping them understand how it is that you can generate that, you can help them obtain more customers. That'll help when it gets to the pricing conversation to create in the mind of what picture that you can provide for your customer, and also what you've done for other customers as well. So let me give you an example, and I'm not trying to sell tax planning, but this is just the world that I live in. If I drill down even further, it might be that we talked about the example that the detailed tax planning will identify tax savings. And this we could drill down even more and say this means you'll be able to keep more of your profit and have more money to spend on you and your family. And that kind of makes sense, right? I want to save money on taxes, and of course, you can do what you want with your money, and it's probably spend more money. You have more money to spend. That sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily. They may come in and they just want their taxes done, and they don't know that, hey, we could do a tax planning review and maybe I could save more money next year. And this goes for the same thing of anything that you're selling or you're providing. It's even better when you do one-on-one conversations, because you can ask more of those questions. So if you take my example of digital marketing, and you're asking questions, and that they want to grow their business, so they want to add 10 more clients so that they can grow their business, and maybe they're looking to buy a home, or maybe they're looking to go on a vacation or something like that. This is information that is helpful so that you can present a solution to your customer, and thereby price is going to be not as significant and not as important, because the value, again, remember the value is higher than the price. And that, at the end of the day, the ultimate benefit comes down to really four things. People will want more money. They'll want more time. That's a big one. Want less pain, which is what we talked about earlier. And they want more pleasure. So let me give you a checklist that you can utilize to ultimately kind of help you in determining the ultimate benefit. We talked about more profit or less cost, more cash, increased wealth, and then non-money ones like save time, better health is a big one. That's a big industry. Less stress, that's a big one. Less risk, that's also a big one. Better lifestyle, you have a lot of those meal plans that are out there, being able to provide you with better health. More time is another one. Greater security, those types of things. But what I encourage you to do is think about how your product or service helps people in these manners, and utilize this checklist to come up with how you can add that to your sales script or add that to your brochure or your website. And ultimately, think about what really is the benefit that you provide. In my business, one of the things that I know the ultimate benefit is peace of mind. People want to know that they're compliant with the IRS, that their taxes are filed on time, that that they're generating money for retirement, things like that. Ultimately, it's peace of mind. And think of my brake example. Ultimately, when you think about brakes, one of the things is my father-in-law was a truck driver, and I've always been interested in that industry. And I understand that one of the things he would do is he would drive through here in Los Angeles. It's called the Grapevine. And when you go down the Grapevine, it's a very steep hill, and it's very hard on the brakes, especially way back they didn't have as much technology as we have today. And you had to be very careful, because if the brakes aren't working, right, or if they lock up, that causes some serious damage. And, if you ever seen the movie Ferrari versus Ford, one of the things, I won't give it away, but one of the things in there was, the brakes heat up and it could start a fire. So those are things that, maybe not necessarily you want to do with your customers, but helping them understand the importance of the brakes, or the importance of, how your digital marketing services can help you and save time. Maybe it saves time through being able to focus more on the business. Those types of things, if you can think of ahead of time, will help you when you're having these conversations. So the next strategy is a very powerful one, and this one is building on what we talked about earlier on the pain and the ultimate outcome. And this one is quantification. It's really helpful if you can put a number on the pain whenever possible. I talked about the digital marketing. If you could come up with a way of, okay, well, if we added one new client, how would that impact your sales, or what's the lifetime value of that customer adding those clients? And it doesn't matter in this case if you don't know the exact number. I would just encourage you to tell the customer that it's an estimate. And we're not trying to use trickery here, but we're trying to help the customer understand the possibilities that your solution provides, and helping them understand that value. And this helps when coming up with the pricing. So if I'm in digital marketing and I come up with that this could add X amount of sales, and that X amount of sales is greater than your cost, well, that puts in the customer's mind what I call an anchor, or what price psychology calls an anchor. And that number then makes the price seem much smaller than it really is, and you can charge a higher price. And again, we're not using trickery, but we're coming up with what the ultimate benefit and what we're going to actually deliver. And what's even more powerful is if you can extrapolate this. And when I talked about if you added one more customer and that increased your sales by, say, 10,000, a year. Well, over the lifetime of that customer, say 5 years, that's quite a bit of money, right? And that makes your price then seem much smaller. Or if you take my example of the brakes, if I don't do this thing correctly, it could result in more damage down the line, or I have to redo it, or whatever that may be, and that cost could be more significant. Or just replacing your oil. If I don't do that, that could be quite significant. Or transmission. I've had to replace a transmission. That's expensive. That one is expensive. By servicing that transmission and making sure that that gets done, I could prevent something that could be way worse than it really was. So it's important for you to communicate that. You're not trying to scare people, but you're trying to make sure that they understand fully what could be the outcome of their decisions and your benefits that you provide. So the next strategy is the contrast. And what I'm talking about here really is that when you see two things in sequence that are different from one another, what we tend to see is the second one is more different than it actually is. So let me give you an example. I moved out to California way back in the early 90s, and I left Illinois, where I grew up. It was November. It was extremely cold, and there's snow. And I get out to California, and it was in the 60s, low 60s. And I had shorts and t-shirts on. And when I went out, I noticed that people were wearing jackets, like winter coats, like what I just left. Some had scarves on, and I couldn't understand why. I just thought they were strange, like it didn't make any sense to me. Well, fast forward a year, I was the one wearing a warm coat, and 60-degree weather is quite cold now, and it would be quite nice. But my point is that when I compare it to what it actually was, it wasn't as bad as it actually was when I compare those two. And what that does is it creates in your mind, it kind of builds on that anchor principle that I talked about earlier. But really, how does this relate to pricing? Without contrast, everything sounds expensive. And this is key to making sure that you can communicate with your customer on your product or service that you provide. Remember I said earlier that people don't know the price of anything. Without context, everything is going to sound expensive. And so this principle is very, very important. And this relates to pricing, as you want the first number to be bigger than your price. And again, that goes back to my anchor. And this is a very powerful strategy that you can use. And it doesn't have to be financially related. It could be, if you're looking at the health industry, it could be that losing weight, or it could be, it could be some other things in health. It could be time. If I'm able to save you X amount of hours per year by doing, whatever your service does for them, how would that impact you? That would help you to focus more on your business, and maybe that would add, 2, 3, 4, whatever number of clients, or increase your revenue. That would be a pretty significant impact to your business if we were able to do what it is that we do. So I'm going to give you an example. And again, this comes just from the world that I live in, but we talked about this earlier, is that, as part of your financial statements, we carried out the tax planning review, right? And we talked about that so you pay the least amount of tax. But what if I added in there that, we typically save people between $4,000 and $10,000. Well, that helps when we get to, the price of doing the work, to kind of have a comparison to. And even better, if you can prepare, and what we do is we kind of go through and we'll look at what that savings could be. And that way you have a better reference for the value and the price. Because remember, you as a customer, your customers, my customers, they need to make a profit on the deal. And in their minds, they're comparing this value and this benefit. And so you want to create that in the mind, and the contrast principle will help you in that. And so the last strategy is, and it really builds on number 4, is that, as I mentioned, if you do face-to-face conversations, using questions to identify the ultimate income is going to be very powerful. And ultimately, we want to be able to ask questions and listen so that the customer will tell me what the ultimate benefit is, and by asking the right questions. I go back to my break example. I was busy. My wife was busy. And, ultimately time was a big issue. We wanted to be able to get this done. And by asking these questions, you can understand that, okay, really the issue here is time. And this is how we can get this done. And this is how you'll be less impacted. The risk is being reduced. And you've been able to do that by asking the right questions. Now the price is going to be not as big of a deal for me. And what you could do is ask questions on, sometimes we see this, have you experienced this? Or how would this impact you? This really comes down to spending time in your business, going through each of the features that you have, coming up with what the benefits of those features are, and how you've seen this impact the customers that you have. And that way you can come up with, okay, this is how my solution is going to help them, and now that value is going to be high, and I can increase that price to gain extra profit, that increase my profitability, and more importantly, I want to work with customers that value the work that I do, and I'm sure that's the same for you, because I don't want the what I call the PITA clients, or the pain in the ass clients, or the tire kickers. Somebody else can have those clients. I want the ones that I enjoy working with, and that value what I do, and that understand that I'm there to help them. So let me quickly just go through these 10 strategies, because I know that I've gone through a lot here. But remember, we want to get the price out of the way early if we're doing quotes or proposals, and that's because we want them to have on their mind the last thing is the benefits that we provide, not the features. The features are great, but the ultimate benefits. And if you're doing face-to-face, use this price sandwich benefit, where you're going to use the benefits first, the price, and then even more benefits as well. Focus on the pain. You want to make sure that we understand this so that we can provide them with the solution to help address that. Turn features into benefits. Remember, nobody buys features. They don't buy the drill if they want just a hole in the wall, right? So we need to turn those features into benefits. And we do this by using linking phrases such as, which means that, so that, and ask yourself for each of your features, so what? Think of my professional indemnity insurance. So what? We want to figure out what the ultimate benefit is, and quantify that as much as possible, including extrapolation. Because remember, we want to use the contrast principle. So we want to create an anchor in our customer's mind of what the possibilities are, so that our price then seems smaller. And then ultimately, we want to let the customer tell you what the ultimate benefit is. So now if we go back to our example of where we have a profit of $33,000, and the owner isn't getting paid, hopefully you can see that by utilizing words and strategies, that we can create possibilities where we can actually increase our price. And I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to increase price. I know that we're in an inflationary period. It's a little bit challenging, but when you think about it, it's actually a good opportunity to, improve on the way that we do communicate, and actually go through and increase our prices. Because remember, in my example, if we do increase the prices and we even lose 10% of our customers, we're still coming way out ahead. So that's the good thing. And so that's it that I have for you today, and I wanted to see if you have any questions. I will put in the chat, if I can, a few things that I have here. Let me see if I can do that. Let's go back to. Let me go back to here, and let me go back to here. Basically, we have. I'm just pulling up here. We have a Facebook group where we go through and we talk about tips and tricks and things that we can do from a finance standpoint. And I'll put that in the chat here. That I encourage you to join. It's a private group that we have that you can join if you're not already part of it. Let me just paste this into the chat. That's one of them. There we go. We have a Facebook group that you can join. We have a little bit of about 500 members, and what we do is we share as entrepreneurs. Others contribute as well. If you have questions, you can ask the questions. We share strategies, things like that'll hopefully help you out in your business. We also let's see if I can put it here in the other chat. We also have if you're interested in other techniques that you can use to increase your profitability, we have an ebook there. And then if there's any questions you have, send me an email, or if there's anything that may be helpful that you'd like to discuss, I've included a link to my calendar as well to have a quick chat, and we can go through. Let me see. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see. Yeah. This is a good one. Let me go back to that. Let me go back to the presentation here. The question that got asked is a good one. Is that how is it possible that you increase your prices 15%, but I could afford to lose 30% of my customers and get back to my same position that I'm at today? That those numbers, what's behind those numbers basically is what they're asking. No, this is a good question, and I definitely, if you have more, we built this software and there's a formula behind this, but without going through the formula, when you're increasing your sales, right? You're increasing your sales, but your cost of delivering that is staying the same. So when you actually look at the impact that has in the numbers and you run through it, and this is shocking when we do the math, is that it actually has a more significant impact because it has a compounding impact because all the other costs are going to stay the same. I do build into models that if there's a certain point that you increase sales that I got to add more staffing, right? And so I build those are called like step costs. And what that is that the cost that you incur to deliver the product or service that you have, at some point you're going to step up because I got to add more staff in order to be able to, to receive those types of sales. But generally, it's based on the increase in the sales, and that has actually a compounding effect when you run the math, it's quite powerful actually when you actually start running ways that I can increase the prices. Let's see, other questions. You mentioned that there are other ways to increase your price. Just curious, what are some of the other ways that you could use to increase your price? Yeah, that's a good question. I could do a whole series of seminars on ways to do that. But think about the way that you present your price. One of the things that you see is that, like, for example, when you go to McDonald's, they have the value menu and they provide you with different options of what you could provide or what you could buy. And then let me take another example. I'm thinking off the top of my head is that, when you go to buy an automobile, there's different versions of the automobile that you can provide, or an iPhone is a good example. Okay, there's actually more iPhones, But I think what Apple figured out is that for providing you with options, you're going to tend to buy not the cheapest option, but you're going to buy more of the middle option and maybe not the more expensive option. And it's science or price psychology has proven that if we're given a menu of options, that we're probably going to choose the middle option most of the time. And what you want to do is take what you do and break it down to that, okay, well, maybe I could do something different and provide a different package. So for us, for example, we have an essentials package, which basically is for someone that just wants to be compliant. They want to have everything, filed and taxes and everything to be compliant with the IRS. Then we have a middle package, which includes tax planning and things like that. And then we have another package. And the reason that I do that is because I want our customers, I want to give you options because people like options. They don't like too many options. Like you go to the bread aisle in your local grocery store and oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. But you want to provide your customers options. And the reality is we do so much as entrepreneurs that we're leaving money on the table that we should get paid for. And if you could break it down into different buckets, you might be able to give your customers different options. Digital marketing, for example, would be one that you could provide them with options. And you'll see that all over, that there are different options that you can buy. When you buy a computer, for example, you go to the Dell's website, you'll see that. Some of the other things that you can do is focusing on your marketing is that, okay, if I'm tracking my marketing and I know where that marketing is doing well, I might want to increase that marketing. Things like that. I think the one thing that I see with entrepreneurs is that we automatically default to cutting prices, or we automatically default to going in and cutting costs to increase our profitability. When the reality is that price is the number one driver in your business, and it's the number one thing that we really need to focus on and spend the time on because it has the most impact versus just cutting costs. If we're focused on just cutting costs, there's not a lot of benefit that you can get out of it. Maybe a little bit, but price by far is going to be, and that's kind of what I talk about in the how to increase your profitability ebook. So let's see, any other questions? You guys have any other questions? Let me know. I actually don't see any other questions. Okay. So I guess I will end it there. Let's see that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I will end it there. I really appreciate your time, and like I said, reach out if you have any questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, thank you.